episode 4 or chapter 12.
You got to keep this straight.
Yeah, gotta keep it straight in my head. Known as The Siege.
The Siege. Now, this is actually a pretty big episode. Now, so tell me, are you going to give every bit as an exhaustive? Is like the first 15 minutes going to be you just telling us the story?
No, I'll make it easy on everybody. So, essentially, The Siege is Mandalorian Baby Yoda kind of returned back to Navarro for repairs to their ship and run back into Grief Karga and Marshal Cara Dune. And
yeah, that was interesting.
So she's the new Marshal of Navarro, and they've changed some things. Navarro's definitely changed. They put a school in where, that was a whole bar. And, they just really renovated some things, and he's really trying to move things up. Also, Grief looks a little bit different. He's got a little gray around the whiskers now. So I guess he ran out of Just For Me men on over there on Navarro. But then they once again, Mandalorians need some repairs to his ship, which always seems to be breaking down.
Always. That thing breaks down more than the Falcon.
I know, man. So then now he has, this task of going to this particular stronghold that they have on the other side of Navarro. That was where all the Imperials came from before, and they want to destroy it because there's a lot of cache weapons there. They're trying to sell on the black market, and basically Grief Karga is really trying to just free Navarro and just make it like a trade planet, and just do the whole money thing. What I thought was cool though was that you saw the guy from the very first season.
Yeah, that was really cool that they brought him back.
Yeah, brought him back. The guy, the Mandalorian,
the guy that was like going to be frozen or whatever.
Yeah, he trapped him the first time, and he brought him back, and now he's working for Grief Karga, working off his debt, which is like substantial. It's like 350 years or something.
Yeah, because he keeps going, we'll knock another 100 years off. We'll knock another 30 years off for this. And yeah, I thought that was really cool. And this is something that's worth mentioning as well, because I remember when I first saw him in the first season, I was a little skeptical about how the show was going to be, because I was just like, man, is this going to be one of these almost slapsticky Marvel humor-ish type of thing? Are they going to try to continue with that? And his character was cool, but I have to say that I loved the character a lot more in this episode.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And I thought it was great that they brought him back, because he's a character I was not necessarily asking for.
No, but I mean, you kind of, he served a purpose. And, of course, you had cute moments. Baby Yoda's in school with all the rest of the kids, so that was funny.
Yeah, and then having to use the Force to
steal the boys' cookies. Mm-hmm. Those little macarons. And then, so they pretty much go on this whole, mission where they have to go into destroy this whole base. And when they get into the base, they kind of realize this is not a base just as a military base, but it's actually more than that, which they find out to be a lab. And they also find out that Gideon is still alive. And so then now there's like, okay, we got bigger problems on our hand. And they also realize that he's still looking for the child.
Well, the thing that I really like going into a lot of the things, because that seems to be how we're handling it. We're going over some of the stuff we like, some of the stuff we don't like. Mm-hmm. Maybe not in any particular order, but
yep.
I really love the way this thing started.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was cool, and just seeing how Grief Karga is like Grandpa Karga almost, because he's like, oh, little one, and he's all so happy to see him. He's all talking to him like a baby, like, is Mando taking care of you? He says, yeah. I mean, it's just like, who are you now?
Yeah, but don't forget there was that whole scene, though, where he went in and, like, at the very beginning, when he went in and strung that guy up.
And, no, not in The Siege?
Yeah.
Which guy?
Well, actually, no, maybe it wasn't.
Yeah, that was the other one.
Yeah, that was the other one. That was, like, the first episode?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was similar, though, because there was something where he was doing that I remember.
Apparently not.
But, I mean, you're right, though. The fact that, and this goes back to something that I brought up in the last episode, mm-hmm. which is, again, you have the recurrence of characters.
Yeah.
Cara Dune and Grief Karga were both characters that were introduced into the first season, and they kind of weighed pretty heavily in that season.
Right.
But yet, this is the first appearance of them, and we're on the 4th episode.
Right. And,
which I love that, because it's like you don't have to cram. This is what I always hated about having a keyboardist in a band. That's why I never wanted to have a keyboard player in a band. You're probably like, okay, where's he going?
Wrong show.
Yeah, right. That's your other channel. But no, because the problem with hiring a keyboardist and having a keyboardist be the official member of the band is now suddenly every song that you write has to have keyboards in it. Because it's unfathomable for the keyboard player to just not play during a song. It's sort of like if they're an official member of the band, they're going to be playing a company, whatever. Whereas if you just, maybe you have keyboards on some songs, you don't on others, then you hire a guy to tour, it's understood. And this is a mistake that a lot of times they end up making on a TV series, is the fact that once you introduce a character and they're a regular character, now they got to be in every episode. But they resist the temptation to do that, and I love that. Because like you said, we see Grief and we see Cara now, there's been some growth. They have a slightly different appearance. In Cara's case, she has a different job. Grief is doing something different. There's been growth. It kind of goes back to what you talked about in the last episode. You're actually seeing a lot of growth in these characters.
I think the scene you were referring to, though, when you said someone was getting strung up, I think you're talking about when Cara pretty much walked in on the Walrus Man crew.
Yeah, that's
probably what you were talking about.
Yeah, I was getting him confused, but I knew there was a whole prologue, and that was it.
Yeah.
It was kind of when she went in, and there was all the Walrusmen people.
And she saved a little meerkat squirrel thing. From getting
eaten. She went in and kicked a lot of butt and stuff like that, and it was cool. It was good to see that growth plays right into what we're talking about. That you actually have this whole thing now to where she's actually belonging somewhere. And this is, I think, a direct result of her being with the Mandalorian for a while.
Yeah, she's laid down the law. She sees that, these people.
Yeah, I mean, because she was wandering. She was practically running, trying to lay low. Now she's like, you know what? I got to put roots down somewhere and
why not be here and start something brand new? And I got to, I have a position and everything. One of the things I did enjoy about this is at the very beginning, Mando and Grief are kind of talking about his run-in with the New Republic, and he was just like, they should stay out of this, that the Empire couldn't, keep the Outer Rim. What makes them think that they can? And so that goes into the end of the show when the New Republic does show up once again, and it's that same guy too. It's like, he's kind of like this weird like detective or something that just keeps popping up.
Yeah, I think it's great that they have these recurring New Republic character guys now, and they're giving you a picture, which did not happen last season. They're giving you a picture of what the New Republic's role is in this part of the universe.
Yeah, they're really trying to establish, some order and control. And so that you can see the power struggle between them, the Empire, and then just the general lawlessness in the galaxy anyway. And so they're trying to put out a bunch of fires at one time, and it's kind of difficult. So just seeing that, okay, they're trying to be cool to some people, but then they're like, okay, other times we have to lay down the law. So I thought that was really interesting. And then once they got into the whole mission, the comedy between, I don't even know what the little blue gill guys, I'll look it up. But,
yeah, I know. He was so funny. He was legitimately hilarious in this episode to me. I thought he was just, there were like so many really great one-liners. I wish I can remember some of them, but there were so many great.
I was like, park your gills, right? Or like, I'm going to let you walk back with whatever's left in your humidity vest. And I'm just like, and he's like, okay, well, that's not leaving me much of an option there.
But yeah, I mean, there was even funny moments though between, because Din always has some funny lines in a lot of the episodes too. And I mean, that's another thing that I love about this show is that it's very character driven and there's a camaraderie with them, and I like that. I like the fact that they do that. There's sort of like and you get this feel on a lot of, like, you and I watch Frasier all the time. back when they had Wings or Cheers or, Seinfeld or, I mean, Friends, you name it. It's all those ensemble shows.
Yeah.
And they basically have this bond. There's like this chemistry that they have.
Mm-hmm.
The good ones I'm talking about.
Right.
Where you basically feel it and you actually feel a part of that world while you're watching it. And in a lot of cases, in my case especially, I mean, if I'm feeling, a little bit anxious or something, I'll go watch those shows because it's almost like you're in that world now. It's and The Mandalorian, it's doing the same thing. It's like you have these group of people, particularly when he gets with Kara and Grief, where there's this almost ensemble cast bond with those guys.
Yeah, they're kind of like, they automatically kind of sync together.
Yeah.
And as they're taking on the stronghold for the remnants of the Empire, and of course the mind throw, that's what the guy is. They're just he's kind of like the comedic relief, but he's, of course he kind of has a stake in this stuff too. And, once again, you're seeing the Mandalorian kick some butt. He's launching, stormtroopers off the balcony of this thing, man. And, he's laying waste to everybody. And you're just like, okay, that's what I'm talking about. And then as they start to progress, you start to find out, okay, that this base is more than just a base. It's actually a lab. And then you actually see the communication from that one doctor. And now you're starting to see another big piece of that puzzle where he's saying, okay, well, the test thing that we tried to do failed. We only had so much blood we took from the child. He's so small that we only could get so much at one time, but we've exhausted all that, so we will need the host again.
Yeah, but did you catch the part where he said the M count was low?
Yeah, it's the M count. Yeah, it's like,
So midi-chlorians are coming back.
Yep.
But again, this is one of the things that the Mandalorian is doing really well, is the fact that they're bringing in stuff from all eras, whether it's the prequels, the original trilogy, the Clone Wars animated series, Rebels, maybe not Resistance. Resistance happens like way later, but yeah. I mean, they're actually bringing in, some of the stuff from the books, because like I mentioned, Cobb Vanth was like an Aftermath trilogy guy, and they're bringing in a lot of stuff from the lore that I love, but they're doing it okay. So I have to almost wonder, will they give us midi-chlorians in a way that we don't hate?
Maybe. And
Dave and I had a pretty spirited discussion about the whole thing on the last show.
I'm sure anytime we bring up midichlorians, it's always going to be a spirited conversation.
Well, I mean, because the thing is that I think he was talking about where, some of it made sense. And it was, well, you and I had generally both of us are kind of like, we could have lived without it, but
yeah, it wasn't necessary to really do, but
it wasn't necessary to do. But once it was there, I think where our thing came from was the fact that it was like, okay, neither one of us thought it was necessary, but you were able to hang with it a little bit more than I was at first.
Yeah, I mean, I think the midichlorian thing is, like I said, it was unnecessary.
You said it was an explanation that works.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, okay, well, does the Force, like, okay, well, there's these cells that live within all living beings or whatever. Like, okay, if you have a certain count, it just means you're more, adapt to,
maybe susceptible to the Force, whatever.
Yeah, to the Force. It's no different than, like, all right, if you have a gene in your family where, like, okay, you're more susceptible to be tall, or it's
and
kind
again,
of like the same thing.
Even though we're going to end up rehashing this discussion now. But pretty much my whole thing was, and again, I agree with all that. I mean, it's kind of like, as an explanation on its own, I don't necessarily have a problem with it. My problem with it is they're dropping more sci-fi into Star Wars where it doesn't belong. It's no different than you watch Lord of the Rings. They don't have a blood test for the magic for Gandalf. You don't need it. It's a fantasy.
Right.
And it takes away the fantasy element. And even though you can, what's the word? It begins with an R. This is like grammar. Not resolve. Oh man, it's like now we got to play $100,000 pyramid where it's like, it begins with, but basically like you're aligning what Obi-Wan was saying and this whole midi-chlorian thing, because the Obi-Wan explanation in episode 4 was perfect. And it was more the fantasy explanation. Now, the point that you had made on that show, which I think was when we were talking about the nature of the Force, the point that you made was that it's not so much that it contradicts it as much as it just explains it in a scientific way.
Or it expounds upon it. It's
or expounds on it.
Because it doesn't really, like I said, it doesn't take away from what Obi-Wan said. It's just saying that this is what causes that to happen. Like, this is the energy. This is what the energy field is drawn from.
And that's why I didn't like it because of what it was doing. But I mean, I can hang with it. It wasn't like I was.
But like you said, it's not necessary. Like, either way it went, it's not like people were really wondering, like, where did the Force come from? We just accepted that that's what it was, and that's it.
And that's all you had to do, right?
Right, and I get it.
And it's better if you keep it like that. Because my biggest point was that if you start to try to scientifically explain stuff, now you're going to paint yourself into some corners.
Right.
If you keep it vague and very mystical and whatever, you don't have to explain as much. Ronaldo says, a little fact, the droid that was in the school mentions Chandrila as the capital of the New Republic. Again, it seems they don't ignore canon. Of course they don't ignore canon, because it's Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau. These are the guys that basically embrace canon. They kind of bring it in.
Yep, group hug.
They love canon. They love the books. They love all this stuff. This is why everybody was really excited to get these guys. I mean, Filoni himself is practically a source of canon at this point, because number one, he's sort of picked up where Lucas left off with the Clone Wars, Rebels. He's one of the guys that's basically contributing to a lot of these things. And I think that that's important. Now I'm going to bring in, Ronaldo, your other comment, because I kind of wanted to save it. He says, so was that Snoke?
Was who Snoke?
So if you actually look,
the test thing.
If you look at the end where Gideon was, you see like some in the background. You do see like these like super battle death trooper guys, which that looks cool.
Yeah,
I want to know what those dudes are all about.
And they look like they're made by Dodge.
Yeah,
had the 3 stripes, the red stripes.
Don't say that. It means I'm gonna have to actually probably work on another reveal. Introducing the new Battle Super... But the thing is, you saw some Snoke-like creatures in the lab before that.
Oh, yeah, and a little...
Kind of very similar to how it was in Palpatine. Yeah. And they looked exactly like Snoke. And yeah, I don't know if that was Snoke himself, because we don't know how many Snokes he went through before he got to Snoke. Snoke it. You know, if you're just caught snoking after work, you know.
Smoking some crack.
Smoking some crack, yeah, exactly. I mean, but again, we don't know how many times he smoked up before he got to Snoke.
How many Snokes could a Snoke
Snoke
wood? Like, it's like one of those crazy little tongue twisters.
It totally is, man. But I mean, again, I
know, right?
It's
what
true,
else?
though.
What else
it's like, what else are you gonna do? Because we don't know. Were those, and this is where the canon question comes into play. It's like, were each of those a version of Snoke that didn't? Okay, that one failed. Let's make another one. Or were they all different beings? But Snoke was the one that actually,
survived,
right. Were they all meant to be the same thing, or were they meant to be different beings, but Snoke was the one that came to fruition?
No, I mean, that's totally a good point, Ronaldo. I mean, and I think a lot of people were really wondering if that was actually Snoke. The other thing is, did you catch the reference of carbonite blindness?
Yes. Yes. I thought, see, and again,
like
these guys...
I still can't see out of my left eye.
Yes.
Like, and I was like, all right.
I mean, that's one of the things that I thought was just done so brilliantly, is the fact that they bring in these really subtle things, but what I like about it is that they don't beat you over the head with fan service like what was done in the sequel trilogy.
Right. It's kind of just dropped and moved on. And like, if you really didn't, like, a lot of times you might not even catch it if you really weren't paying attention.
Right. And the problem is, and we'll get more into this with episode 5, because this comment that I'm about to make really pertains more to the 5th episode than it does to this. But you can really say this about the last 2, 3 and 4, where JJ thought more like a commercial filmmaker, like I've got to make this to where it'll appeal to a wide audience so it makes $1 billion. He was thinking he played it safe because this all is what The Rise of Skywalker should have been.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Favreau and Filoni are giving it what the story needs, and they're bringing in all this stuff because they don't have to explain all this stuff. I mean, they're bringing in all these things from the canon, whether it be in the books or the comics, or little Easter eggy things from the Clone Wars or things like that. It's like they're bringing all this stuff in, and they're not. There's characters that they're bringing in where the casual fan's not going to know who these people are, but again, they don't have to. Yeah. They'll learn.
Yep.
We were all casual fans once. I mean, this is what kills me about that argument that Kathleen Kennedy keeps making. It's like, look, when we all saw A New Hope, especially once he called it A New Hope and it was episode 4, so now we know we're being dropped in the middle of some story.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just casually throwing things out like the Imperial Senate and, Grand Moff this. And, I mean, we don't know what any of this stuff is.
Mm-hmm.
There was no explanation. Like, there was no little program booklet we got at the theater to explain to us the history and all that. You know what we got? We got an opening crawl.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were expected to put our little big boy pants on and just watch the movie and get the story.
All right.
But now everybody wants, like, well, you can't bring this in because the casual fan, you know what? Screw the casual fan. That'll get me views. But no, seriously, because if you think about it, Star Wars is in a very unique place right now because, and we've talked about this a million times, when it was new, it was basically made for that generation.
Mm-hmm.
As subsequent generations started adopting it and as they started to make new Star Wars content, well, now you have a problem because you have different levels of fandom. You have people who came into it and are basically adhering to, like, it's almost like they're a certain trilogy or whatever is precious to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so now it's almost like, it was like one of those things that I once said that, okay, they should make a Star Wars movie for the fans. And the question becomes, well, which ones?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, in my mind, I kind of look at things, to your point, like almost like music. Like, okay, there's different generations of people who came to know Michael Jackson. Like, there's kids now who were born in like 2005 or something like that, who've now heard and seen Michael Jackson, whether it's on YouTube or, heard his music on the radio. But then there's people like me who I actually grew up during an era when he was still releasing brand new music, and then there's people like you who actually were around when he actually like released Thriller. Like, you remember when Thriller was actually released.
Off the wall, even.
Off the wall. Yeah, exactly. So it's like, okay, well, I'm thinking, and I often liken it to, I'm thinking like Bad is Michael Jackson's first album. And it's like, no, let's go back to Thriller. Let's go back to Off the Wall. Then he's Jackson 5. Like, I'm like, oh, okay, he did all this other songs too. So I'm like, oh, okay, that was Michael too back then. Yep, that was Michael Jackson. Wow. So I just went back and just looked at it. So now in this day and age, when you have Disney Plus, that puts all the content in a nice little spot for you. You don't really have to go searching for it much. Now, granted, some of the other stuff like the books or the
holiday special.
God.
Hey, you can watch our version of it. Remember, there's going to be a link in the comment section.
But yeah, I mean, you have all these ways now of like going back and retrieving this information very quickly, might I add, as opposed to, this taking place, years ago. So, for the casual fan, like, and these new kids, if you really want to know, like, okay, where did this happen and who's this person?
No, you bring up an astounding point because they actually have one source now that they can get this stuff. It's not as if you're lost on something. You can't. I mean, I guess you do have to subscribe to Disney Plus. Mm-hmm. But the point is, once you subscribe to that, and by the way, you do get all the Marvel content and all the Disney films and all that. But yeah, you can go, wow, what's this reference from? Oh, it's from the Clone Wars. Well, what's that? Well, okay, now I can go and watch the entire
the whole series. Yeah.
But I think what I'm talking about, though, comes into it's yes, you can do it, but it's like, what level of fandom are you where you're going to care? And this is where it goes into my point. It's like, look, if you're that casual and you don't really care, then don't worry about it.
Right.
It's not like these characters, like, if you didn't know who Bo-Katan was, you would be totally fine with how she was introduced in The Mandalorian. You'd be pretty much up to speed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it won't be as rich and as cool and all that other stuff, but it's not like you're going to be lost.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like when I would always try to watch Dune. Now, there's a movie for you that's, I don't know what the new one, you know, the trailer for the new one looks cool, but you talk about a story where you get lost, like, as soon as the credits come up.
Right. I'm laughing at Ronaldo's comment.
I know, I see it.
Ronaldo says, I like how they delved into Cara Dune and how she felt after the destruction of Alderaan. I just hope they don't say she's Padme's niece or something like that.
Well, and that's, yeah, let's get into that a little bit, because that was something else that I wanted to bring up too, was the fact that they made this big connection to Alderaan. Mm-hmm. That now you found out that Cara was from Alderaan.
Well, we knew that.
Yeah, I know we knew it, but it was like, I know they brought that up in the first season, mm-hmm. but I think that this is the first time that it was connected more to the New Republic, and you had a guy trying to recruit her, mm-hmm. saying like, hey, you know, we really need you. Like, it was more meaningful.
Yeah, he really was trying to sympathize with her and really try to connect. The other thing is, I'm like, well, dude, you just start carrying medals around in your pocket? I mean, I'm like, what the heck was that? It's like, oh yeah, by the way, here.
The other thing too is,
like a gold star in school.
And
like.
again, it's been a minute since I've seen this episode, but it was kind of weird that he just knew her whole. He must have been looking her up.
Well, yeah, I mean, because
obviously she's a marshal, and he wants to see all the backstory. But it just
mm-hmm.
it's interesting to me that it's kind of like you said, they're like detectives now. It's almost like they're internal affairs kind of thing going.
Yeah.
I mean, even though they're not really part of the New Republic yet, but it's kind of like that Homeland Security. That's really more what it's like. Like, I'm going to get into your business a little bit because mm-hmm. you're on my radar now. And it's weird that Cara didn't seem to be too, like, freaked out by that.
Yeah, I mean, I think because she's kind of like, well, what are you going to do at this point? You know, and it's kind
of... Well, maybe, but if you remember from season 1, she was really, like, adamant about laying low.
Yeah, but I think, you know, once she kind of found her, I think that's what happens when you really don't know where you fit and you just kind of, you're initially just running, but once you kind of find your place and you know that you have a team of people who are really behind you, you know, when you got Grief, you got the Mandalorian, you know, kind of like backing you on a lot of different things, you kind of a little bit more comfortable because the thing about her was that she was alone. And that's mm-hmm. the thing. So it's like when you're alone, you know, physically, you're going to feel alone emotionally too. But now she has a sense of community. She has a sense of family. She has a sense of belonging now. And it's not like you really can really say anything. I mean, like, I was one of you guys. So what are you guys going to do? You know, so I just chose not to do this anymore. So
yeah, I mean, I guess I could see what you're saying. I mean, it's...
See, now Grief, I couldn't see the cool thing about him is that because of his rap, you know, because that's the other thing. And this is what I love, you know, and I'll say this, like... Well, I'll ask you this question first.
Uh-oh.
So far, since we're not doing Duel of the Fates, so far, who is your favorite character?
Wow, you even say it like it's a Duel of the Fates segment. It's weird.
Who's your favorite character? Like,
oh, I thought you were gonna give me. Like I thought this was really gonna be like Duel, like this versus that.
No. I mean, just saying, like, out of all the characters that we've
Han Solo
in the Mandalorian, who's your favorite character?
It's tough. And that's actually tough because I love all these characters.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, I really like the Din Djarin character.
Mm-hmm.
He's really a surprise to me because I was that guy that was really bummed when it wasn't going to be a Boba Fett miniseries.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found out it's going to be about some Mandalorian that it's like, why? I mean, that's almost like,
yeah.
You know, if you think back to the Clone Wars when they had this whole story arc about the Mandalorians, it'd be like if they picked one of the guys and said, yeah, we're going to have a series about that guy. Who cares about that guy? You know, it's
right.
But what's funny is when you get to know him and you see his growth and you see that he cares about this child and he cares about where he came from and he's trying to make a connection. There's a lot of story there.
Yeah, definitely.
What a shock. You get really good storytellers, they tell good stories.
Mm-hmm.
And the sign of a really good storyteller is when you have to actually sit there and go like, man, who is my favorite character? Because every character that came up, I'm like, I'd be tempted to say the Mandalorian,
Okay.
but I love the Grief Karga character. I love the Cara Dune character. And I was the guy that was like, oh, Gina Carano, really? Really? You're going to bring her into this? You're going to,
Yeah.
I fell in love with her character.
Yeah, Jason says how my favorite character is Mando. My favorite side character is Grief Karga. Moff Gideon is also very cool.
Yeah, I mean, and that's it. And then, of course, Ronaldo, going back to the earlier point about Alderaan, says, when the pilot said, did you lose someone on Alderaan? I said, how about the whole planet?
I know, right?
Yeah, I know.
That's what she said to everybody. I was like,
yeah, it was just kind of like, dude, really? I mean, that's just...
Yeah.
I mean, that's just really insensitive, man.
Stupid.
Oh, did you lose somebody on Alderaan? We kind of lost Alderaan.
Yeah, how about Alderaan?
Like the whole planet. Yeah. We lost the planet.
And where have you been?
I mean, granted, I guess that people could have been off-world or something.
But
if you're going to lose anybody, it's going to be on Alderaan.
Yep. Now, my favorite character out of all of this so far is Gideon. Like, Moff Gideon, to me, is like the coolest, like probably like the coolest bad guy that's not a force wielder to me. Just because I just love the way he just kind of approaches things. And especially like the little mind control. Well, not the, I don't know,
man.
Control.
We don't necessarily know yet that he's not a force wielder.
We don't know yet, but I'm just saying thus far. At this point, yes, we don't know, but I'm just going to say Moff Gideon because...
Yeah, he's another one.
Like when he popped up and he's actually outside the cantina and then he starts running down their names and everything about them and they're just like, holy crap. Like but he kind of does that as like kind of a psychological warfare to kind of like, well, wait a minute. Well, you really know who you're with. And
that's the thing. This is what I love. This is what I love about the way that these characters are being written now, even though... Because it's really cool that they can keep coming up with these different characters and make them different.
Yeah.
Because the temptation would be, do you make them like Tarkin? Do you make them like Thrawn? Do you make them like Vader-ish or Palpatine? Do you make them, like, even...
He's kind of, he gives me like a mob boss vibe. And that's the thing
yeah,
I like
well,
about
that's
him.
it. It's almost like he'd fit right at home with the Hutts and all those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And don't forget, Lucas is going to do that whole underworld type of thing.
13,
yeah, and Filoni was going to be a part of that, no doubt. So,
yeah,
maybe there was some character in there that he was somewhat influenced by. But it's refreshing, even in the books. In A New Dawn, man, I wish I can remember. Look up the main villain in A New Dawn.
Jason probably already knows.
Yeah, Jason probably totally knows. But I keep forgetting his name. But he was kind of like half. He kind of had a Grievous vibe in a way, but he was really threatening. And he was unlike anybody that they had really introduced before. So I give it to them that they can keep introducing these really cool characters. And if you really look at the ensemble cast of The Mandalorian, right? It's just, everybody's really cool. Even Quill.
Oh yeah,
which everybody forgot about him after season 2 starts.
I knew Jason would know before I even got to it. Count Vidian.
Count Vidian, that's it. Yes, Count Vidian. That guy, if you really look that guy up, he's a really, really cool villain. Ronaldo says, my favorite character is Din Djarin. I like his evolution since the first season. It amazes me how much I care about him, even though I can't see his face.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like, here's a guy that's able to emote, and don't forget, in like the first season, it wasn't even Pedro Pascal in the suit half the time.
Right.
But the idea that they could actually give you a character that emotes and you really care, even though he's this faceless guy. That's ultimately, I would have to say that's probably it, because I'm thinking to myself, who would I not want to see an episode without?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I would come to Din, because
Well, he's only the star
Well,
of the show.
yeah, but I mean, you could
Oh, no,
go
just kidding.
off on a side story with any of these, and that's the point. It's one of the things that we always said, even about Frasier. We got to go back to Frasier. Is you could take any of the characters in Frasier, even the most minute side character, and you can make an entire series out of them. That's the sign that you have a good ensemble cast and a good batch of well-written characters. And I can honestly say that if a Grief Karga comic came out, I'd be all over it.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't. I mean, if they gave him his own series, it would be a little strange, but I'd watch it because I like the character. I like Cara Dune. I think that they could do a lot with her.
Sure.
And then, of course, now you're bringing Bo-Katan into it. We know Ahsoka's coming.
Mm-hmm.
You know, who knows who else they're going to bring in. So, I mean, it's one of those things that I just think that you really have a cast. And that was something I was skeptical about, by the way, when this whole thing first came on. I was like, I don't know, man. You know, it looks like this series is going to be cool. And I think that the tone of the series is going to be done really well. But I was really shocked. Like, I knew I would be invested somewhat. But I'm really surprised by how much I'm invested in all the characters of this show.
Yeah, definitely. I would love to honestly see more with Gideon.
Well, I think we will. I
think next episode we're really going to start to see.
We're going to start to probably see more, maybe the next 2 or 3, and then it's tough to say whether or not they're going to end his storyline along with the rest of the stuff, because it seems like they could, but then
I don't think so.
It's like I do thoroughly believe that they're going to end the child part of it. They're going to end the child part of it by then. But that does not necessarily mean they have to end anybody else's.
Right.
Because now you can go in, like you said, we can bring Sabine in on season 3, and now you can have this whole who's ruling Mandalore. Is it going to be Bo-Katan? Is it going to be Sabine? Is it going to be Gideon? Because don't forget, Maul ruled it for a while.
Right.
And he had the Darksaber for a while. Because that's another thing they got to bring up. Okay, Gideon has it. How did he get it? Who did he get it from?
Right.
You know, so, I mean, there's just a lot of unanswered questions there. And I think that these are things that you really have to, you know, you just have to.
Yeah, one of the big things I loved about this particular episode of The Siege was that, you know, we start to see the plan from the remnants of the Empire. So, like, okay, we already kind of knew they were, you know, from season 1, they wanted this asset and they wanted to do experiments on them. We kind of figured that they were trying to use the blood or something like that because of the forest or whatnot. So then now, you know, we're seeing at the end of this episode, at the crux of the episode, you know, that, okay, this, the doctor pretty much comes up and it's like, hey, Moff Gideon, blah, 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 here's where we are. One, he kind of reminds me totally of Hugo Strange from
He does.
Gotham. But outside of that, though, you know, it's like, okay, well, what are they planning? And, you know, now you see what we thought to be a Snoke, which was a Snoke of genius to put that in there. But then,
now where there's Snoke, there's fire.
Oh, here we go. The rabbit hole.
Yeah, it's like leave in the comment section your best Snoke pun.
Yes. Oh, we should do. You know what? Do that.
Yeah, do that. Leave your best Snoke pun in the comment section.
Jason Ronaldo, let's go. But then the other thing too is just that, you know, at the very end, you know, okay, you know, those guys were working on the Razor Crest, you know, planted the tracking beacon on the thing, and you know that one lady finally got her transmission. It's like, yep, all right, Snoke. I mean, not Snoke. All right, Gideon. You know, we planted the beacon. You know, it's working. So can we confirm that they still have the asset? Yep, we still can confirm that they have the asset. All right, we'll be ready. And then you see all these like trooper looking things, and they don't look like.
No,
human.
They look like these like super battle. They're
like droids.
They
but
look
they're
like death troopers, but they look like the battle droid version of a death trooper. Jason says, Snoke, I refuse to make a Snoke pun. And then Ronaldo says, by the way, Dr. Pershing said there was a volunteer. Do you think it's Moff Gideon or someone else?
I think it's someone else because he was talking to Gideon. So I think the volunteer was probably whoever or whatever Snoke was.
Yeah, I mean, unless
Unless,
they really go out on a limb and it's Palpatine, but they wouldn't. If it was Palpatine, their Gideon wouldn't even be.
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question because they'd have to get some Force guy, and by volunteer, do they mean voluntold? I mean, this is the Empire we're talking about. Volunteer means something a little bit different in the Empire, but yeah, no, you're right. The last, what was it, probably like 5-10 minutes at the most.
Mm-hmm.
That's the part where it's like, ooh, we're full on back into the story mode now.
And they're really good at giving you they're really good at giving you a good cliffhanger. Like, okay, what's the next episode?
Yeah, you know what I hate about that, by the way? That brings up a really good point. I'm glad you said that because it irritates me that they don't say, like, next on The Mandalorian.
Oh, yeah, I'm glad, we don't get like that, a preview of next week. Yeah.
I want one.
No, I'm saying I hate that they don't do that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, I mean, the thing about it is they'll end, like, in such a spectacular way, and you're like, I gotta know what. But in a way, though, it does make it kind of cool because when you put it on that day, like when Friday comes around, no matter when you have a chance to watch it, you really have no idea what you're getting. Like another thing that I really loved about this too, Dr. Pershing, right?
Yep.
I love the fact that, they were analyzing his message and they're like, no, it was done 3 days ago. And it's like, again, there's that sense of dread that, ooh, it's almost like you're finding out at this, even though you already know Gideon's alive.
But yeah, for them.
But for them, and you feel that. And they're doing such a great job at making you feel that danger and that ominousness and, all these really great things about it. And yeah, they're really now advancing the lore a little bit.
Yeah, Ronaldo says, imagine if the volunteer for that Snoke clone was Mace Windu.
Yeah, well, there have been, and Daryl and I were talking about this a little bit off camera today, but
if they retrieved his body, I guess maybe.
Well, and we'll see. But again, there has been let me just say this is a rumor that's been gaining a lot of traction, where people seem to think for some odd reason that Mace Windu is going to pop up in this series. Now, I will say that if he is going to pop up, this would be the series because, as we know, there's been a speculation that he did not die because, after all, his hands were chopped and he was thrown out, the window. But we all know that you can use the Force to slow your descent. There are ways he could have survived. But I've always said, and I think you and I addressed this once, that if he were going to come back out, he would have been coming out during the original trilogy. Because he's powerful enough. So he could have gone and...
Plus, I don't think he could be Snoke anyway because he's not that tall.
Well, not that he's not... No. This isn't that he's Snoke. This is that he's going to come back. Like, he's been laying low. Maybe he's dressed up as a Mandalorian. Maybe he's just laying low. And then he's going to come back out.
Okay. Ronaldo says, my favorite Snoop Dogg song is Snoke Weed every day.
Oh, yeah? Well, my favorite Motley Crue song is Snoking in the Boys' Room. It's not, but it works with the thing. I know.
Oh, man.
People are going to unsubscribe in a minute. But, I mean, it would make sense. But again, I think that they have to tread very carefully because you don't want to do something where the fan base is going to go, oh, come on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So far, I think they've been doing a really good job because the fact that you bring up these little Snoke things in the lab, well, that makes sense because we know that in 20 or 30 years, I mean, even from the Rise of Kylo Ren comics, we know that Snoke was a thing.
Right.
Even before he was in the First Order, people knew who he was. So this is 6 years after Return of the Jedi, which means there could be like a 14-year period between maybe around the time we see Snoke versus at this time period. So who knows? And then Ronaldo says, by the way, I was kidding. The Mace Windu is Snoke theory makes no sense to me. And then Jason's got a couple of comments. He was hit by Palpy's lightning, which was so powerful that he could barely hold back Sidious's lightning with a lightsaber. Kenobi blocked Dooku's lightning easily and one-handed. Dooku killed Ventress in seconds. Windu should be dead. Yeah, true. But the thing is that he was still screaming when he went out the window, though. So he was alive. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
He was not dead when he went out the window. He could have died maybe shortly after. He could have gotten plowed into by a speeder.
Or yeah, maybe it just took a while, like a few seconds for it to finally just shut his body down.
Point is, we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
And because we don't know, the writers can go in any direction.
True.
Don't forget, Windu was extremely powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Extremely powerful. And he also had a little bit of dark side power himself.
That's true.
So we really don't know.
If they could bring back Maul and he was lopped in half.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I got to look at, too. Guys, they brought back Darth Maul. Darth Maul was cut in half and he fell down a shaft. Let's be real. If they could do that, anything's on the table.
Sounds like a kid's nursery rhyme.
It's...
It's cut in half, fell down the shaft. But
exactly.
Yeah, so let me ask you guys, let me ask you this question. So I'm going to volley it back to you. What would you rate this episode?
I'm going to probably like an 8.5.
Dang, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Well, I want to be careful what I give 10s to.
Yeah, true.
And I don't want to be that guy that's always saying, well, I don't give 10s to anything because there's always improvement.
Oh, yeah.
There are those people.
True.
But, in the grand scheme of things, here's the problem with rating the episode. And I'm just going to put this out there now. Pretty much, what I give the episode today may not be what I give the episode once I see the entire series.
True. Jason says, Maul survived, and I'm glad he did. If Windu becomes an awesome character, I will accept it. But unless they have a super cool story for him, they should keep him dead.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll go even one further. I was really surprised at how easily and how wonderfully I accepted Maul coming back. Because at first I thought it was cheap, but the story was so good I didn't care. Mm-hmm. And that's the key. And again, I think that we can all agree that the key is a good story. You give me a good story.
The only problem is that like now when we start having, and as much as I love Mace Windu and I would have loved, honestly, I wish he would have never died to begin with. But you kind of have to when you look at the totality of the story. But then when you look at it from the rest of the standpoint, it's like, all right, if you bring him back now, it's like, okay, one, what the heck were you like everybody else? And then two, it's kind of like, what are you really going to do with him? Because he's not in the sequel trilogy. So
he's definitely alive.
Who? Mace Windu?
Yeah.
Oh, boy, you about to say something crazy. I can see it in your face. I'm looking dead at you. I know you're about to say something crazy. What is it, Aaron?
Well, you know me really well. That's
I do.
The problem. You can see that look, that little twinkle in my eye, like, ooh, I just thought of something really hilarious, but it's true. Think about this.
Well, he lives in all of us.
No, it's not that cheesy. Besides, we already knew that. I'd say there's a little Mace in all of us, but that's kind of nasty.
Ew.
No, think about it. Maul falls down a shaft, survives. Palpatine falls down a shaft, survives. Now, Windu didn't fall down a shaft, but he fell. Mm-hmm. If you fall, you get to come back. So, Jason says, I would rate this episode 9 out of 10. Windu's story is major part of Anakin's fall. Yeah, but then again, so is Palpatine dying too. If you think about it, Palpatine dying, it's like when they brought him back, that sort of, and again, I don't necessarily subscribe to the fact that it completely undoes the redemption and all this other stuff. But I do understand people's point, though, that it does lessen it. Then he goes on to say, Maul's death was a waste. Windu's story is a major part of Anakin's fall. Yeah, and again, that's one of those things that I always talk about, too, is that just like you have to be able to tell a good story, if you're going to bring somebody back, it has to be it has to serve the story better than what originally served by killing them off.
Definitely.
So in other words, it's kind of like if killing them off served the story, bringing them back has to somehow serve the story in a better way than keeping them dead. But then again, this is all fantasy anyway, so I mean, who are we to say? But so you're saying 8.5.
Yep.
Jason says 9. Ronaldo, I don't think we got yours. And if anybody else wants to chat in there too, and what you guys would rate it, let us know. But other than that, how would you guys rate it? How did you guys feel that this stacked up against the previous episodes? And do you like the direction The Mandalorian is going? Leave that in the comments section. Ronaldo says, you think those Dark Troopers are droids or armors? I think they're actually like battle droid versions of Death Troopers. That's what they look like to me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I kind of take that.
Jason says, I did not like that Palpatine came back to life the same way I wouldn't like if Windu came back to life. Like I said, I agree. I mean, it does cheapen the story a little bit. In the original version of Episode 9, Palpatine did not come back. And as much as I enjoyed him coming back, I think it would have been a better story if he hadn't. But I also could see ways that they could have brought him back better than what they did. Then Ronaldo says, I give this one a 9.5 out of 10. Oh, okay. It's my favorite episode. Really? You seen episode 5? Okay. If you haven't, get ready because we're gonna be spoiling that in a few minutes. Jason says Chapter 8 and Chapter 13 were slightly better than 12, but 12 and 13 are very close. Yeah, I would agree with that only because I think that you have to really look at the way that this whole thing is being laid out. I think that you're going to find that this really is one big movie.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is because we're being fed this one chapter at a time, I think the problem with it is that, I don't know, it's almost like, and that's why I say that my rating can change because on one hand, I'm going to give it like an 8.5 today. I might see chapter, I don't even know what we're going to be on at that point, 18?
Mm-hmm.
Or something?
Talking about at the very end?
Yeah. Or 15 or, I can't really do math apparently. But either way, it's like, okay, once I see it in its totality, because I would agree too, Chapter 8 was incredible. And that whole revelation where, Gideon pops out with the Darksaber, I mean, who expected that?
Right.
I mean, first of all, I never thought in a million years we would ever see the Darksaber in live action.
Definitely. No, I agree. I mean, that's one of the things that's kind of like everything is relative, like as far as what you have. So, yeah, I think that a lot of these episodes are getting better. I think we're actually getting more to the story, to the point.
Yeah, and I think by nature of that, I think that's why we're going to naturally rate these things higher.
Yeah, I mean, because of course, the season 1 was just the introduction. We're getting to know these characters. You're introducing everything. You kind of setting up the world, and then now, like in season 2, now we're really getting into the actual plot of it all. And I think this might even carry on to even season 3, just depending on how this one ends. I could see this honestly going at least into season 3.
It could.
At least halfway into it.
It could. I mean, as we've been talking about this, and as we realize there's only 3 more episodes left,
mm-hmm.
There is a possibility because the worst thing they could do is rush everything. Oh yeah, Dwight Terrence.
Yes, Dwight. 8.5, just a half point above 3.
But then he says,
"My bad, I just came out. I thought we were talking about episode 5. Trust me, bro, we're on our way.
We're getting there. We're right there. We're right at the edge."
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time. May the Force be with you, always.